Welcome to July's Ketchup. For those of you who are not familiar with the Ketchup, we're going to take you through some of the bright spots in the new releases in Microsoft 365. My name's Sarah Fenner. I'm a Microsoft 365 trainer, Microsoft certified trainer, and as of yesterday, 2 times I've been awarded the Microsoft MVP Award. It was annual renewal day, 6th of July 2023. So MVP Buzz Day. So I'm back. Yay! Very exciting. Means nothing to anyone who's not in this part of the bubble, if you like. But for those of us in the bubble, it means quite a lot. So that's really nice. Where we get our information from for the Ketchup. I am one of these people who avidly follow the updates to Microsoft. So every day I check the message center. Every day I check the Microsoft 365 roadmap. And as you'll see from the stats I'll show you later, I do a download of the roadmap to check for a record of what's been released and what is coming up. Also use the tech community blogs where you get a lot more detail about the different releases. I was in a conversation with someone from Microsoft via LinkedIn today about upcoming changes to Viva licenses as well. So those tech community blogs do give us that extra detail. The documentation and learning material on Microsoft Learn is also really good if you want to go deeper into a product, as is the Microsoft Support website, which is aimed more at end users. The Microsoft Learn is more technical. Use the Microsoft News stories, and when there's been a recent conference, we use the Book of News. Now, the most recent conference was Build. Microsoft Build was all about AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning features. There wasn't a huge amount in terms of things we can actually get our hands on today unless you're a developer from Microsoft Build. So I haven't really got anything to touch on from that in this particular Ketchup, but obviously what we now see the developers working on from Build are the things we're going to start seeing in the Power Platform, in Microsoft 365, as we move on into the autumn and the next big conference with Ignite in November. As we know, the Microsoft Cloud changes daily. I hope I've captured everything and given you a fair flavour of the changes that are coming. And it's also important to remember that these features hit each of our tenants at different times, some of which is in the control of your admins based on the configuration, some of which is completely out of our control. So the exact availability of the different features can vary tenant by tenant. So as I say, I do rely quite heavily on the Microsoft 365 roadmap, especially when I'm preparing this webinar. And I took a download of the roadmap on Monday morning, so 9 AM British Summer Time, on the 3rd of July 2023. And at that point, there were 1,541 items listed on the roadmap. And you can see that of those, the majority have actually launched. And Microsoft do gradually remove things, but they tend to stay on the roadmap for at least 3 to 4 months after they launch. So it's a very good indication. Now, this is across all of the different clouds. The education cloud and the government cloud, specifically for US-based organisations, has its own features. And those features that are specific to the government cloud or the education cloud are around about 200. There are actually 1,308 items which cover all the clouds, or the generic worldwide cloud, if you prefer. And if I dig into that in a little bit more detail, of those 1,308 items that are not specific to government or education. 260 items have been added since April this year, and 210 have been launched. So it's actually quite a quiet period. We do have, however, 407 items that are currently in development and due for launch by October. So there's a lot coming, and that's the normal cadence of updates from Microsoft. We tend to get a lot of the developer focus in this period between April and now, and a lot of the more tool specific end user style focused from April onwards in the run up to the Ignite conference in October, November time. It's actually middle of November this year. We are still seeing a very similar breakdown in what those 1,308 items relate to. The bulk is still Microsoft Teams. Surprising that there's so much innovation that can still go on in Microsoft Teams after how much it's changed. But there's still a really strong focus in the security and compliance space, that grey section towards the bottom of the chart here. This compliance purview, information protection, security is still 15% of the updates. It's quite a lot in the Office apps space as well. SharePoint and Viva are obviously a big part of that as well. So a few areas contributing the majority of the updates still. I'm not going to go through all 1,308. In fact, some of them are really very small, little tiny tweaks, things you probably won't even notice. So I've picked out a series of different topics I'm going to look at, starting with Outlook, then on into Teams, into that security and compliance space, and then on into the collaboration space with SharePoint, Microsoft Viva, and then picking up those Office apps at the end. So for Outlook, just a couple to point out to you this time. A few in Teams, they're actually quite minor updates apart from that new channels layout. That's going to be a big change for users. And the security and compliance space is, again, mainly things that are enhancements, nothing too major this time. Feels quite nice to have some updates that are not vast sweeping changes. Across the collaboration space with SharePoint, Syntax Stream and OneDrive, again, minor changes really, but some quite impactful in terms of the functionality they're offering, but not things that are going to be difficult to get used to. And the theme continues with Viva, enhancements and improvements, and the same with Office 365. Now, what this tells me from years of Microsoft watching is that the big changes are coming later this year. We already know Microsoft have announced Copilot. All of those AI-driven functionalities and features that are going to start coming forward as we get later in the year, that's where all of the time and investment and enthusiasm, if you like, is going from Microsoft at the moment. And that's where we're going to see the really big features. I do know they're working on a couple of interesting things, which I really hope they bring out at the end of the year. So do stick with us for more on those as they announce them. I'm sorry for being a tease, but it'll be worth the wait, I promise. Okay, so looking at Outlook, two key changes: working hours and location enhancement, and the new Outlook. Now, the new Outlook is going to be a big change for a lot of people, but it's more a colour scheme, look and feel type change rather than a big functionality change. So thinking about the working hours. Now this is available from Outlook for Web. It's available in Outlook for Windows if you're using the new Outlook. It will come to the classic Outlook client, the Windows client and the Mac client as well as we go forward. But today you can get it from Outlook for the Web. You can also change your location in Teams and access it from there as well. And the idea behind this is to show our colleagues at a glance where we're working, whether we're in the office or whether we're remote in a different location, without us having to go through and put that in our calendar manually. And there's a little push pin with a plus in. You can just see that on this slide in your calendar that you can click on and choose office or remote. Yeah, and then you can also choose to set a schedule if you regularly follow a working pattern. And when you go to set a schedule, and I'm just going to play this little video for you to look at that. So clicking on the pin, I can either manually pick my location or choose set a schedule. It opens my settings so I can set not only my working hours, but also my location. And you can set that same location from Teams. You can override it on any given day. And it's just a really quick and simple way of showing your colleagues where you are. Okay, that was actually in the new Outlook. You can see it's very similar to the web experience. And you might have noticed this try the new Outlook toggle at the top of your screen. Your administrators can block that, so you may not see it. But once you click it, you end up in this new version of Outlook. And this is my live Outlook, so I've blurred out a lot of details to protect the innocent, as it were, to not share any personal information. So let's make that a bit bigger. You can see it's similar to the classic Outlook. We've got the compressed toolbar, which we can have in the classic Outlook along the top there. It looks very similar to the web tool, and that's on purpose. The whole point of this new Outlook is for Microsoft to combine the code base. So it's actually the same application wherever we're using it. Slightly different functionality on mobile, Mac, Windows, web, depending quite how that product works, but basically the same under the hood. It also means it's a lot faster. I have far too many accounts generally, as I'm sure I've mentioned before, if any of you have joined any of these Ketchups previously, and the desktop Outlook was just a beast. It took 5 minutes to open. Literally, I would open it and go and make a coffee and come back. And I always had to close it when I'm in a meeting, that sort of thing. Now, nope, open it, opens in seconds, works like a dream. Okay, so my own personal experience says it's really useful. Now, there's a guide that's included in the accompanying blog that we'll publish later to show you how to get started with this and all the information about it. So that's it for Outlook, not a lot. Now, the other main communication tool we have is Microsoft Teams. And I should just mention before I dive into these 5 items, please feel free if you have questions to put them in the chat or use the raise hands button if you're on the live meeting to let me know. Or there will be time at the end. You're obviously welcome to save them to the end if you prefer. If you don't interrupt me, I'll keep going. So, as I say, Microsoft Teams, 5 items to look at this time. We're going to be looking at the collaborative notes and agenda items, which uses Microsoft Loop. We're going to be looking at animated backgrounds, which is more of a gimmick at the moment than a real feature, but there's more to come. we've got the new channels layout, which is the biggest change in Teams in terms of the user experience, apart from new Teams, that we've really ever seen. There's the intelligent recap, which is part of the Teams Premium license as well, which is a big feature. And I was very impressed with it. I have to be honest, I didn't expect to be as impressed as I am. So thinking about these collaborative meeting notes, one of the big complaints people have is they are invited to all of these meetings and they don't know what they're about. So we now have this collaborative meeting notes you can see at the bottom of this screen. And let me just zoom in on that for you. Oh, previous screen, too many keyboard shortcuts. So these collaborative meeting notes, they actually allow us to put in an agenda, to put in meeting notes, to capture follow-up tasks and tag them to people. And it's using Microsoft Loop. So anyone invited to the meeting, with one exception, anyone invited to the meeting can join in and edit those, hence the collaborative part of it. The other feature of Loop is that if we're assigning people to tasks, those integrate back into their task list. So if they're using Microsoft To Do and they've been assigned a task from a meeting with a date, it shows up on their task list in Microsoft To Do. I said there's one exception. Microsoft Loop does not support external people. So if you're having a meeting with external users, you've still got to, I'm afraid, manually take that agenda and put it into the ordinary meeting invite for them to see it. They can't see the collaborative meeting notes in the meeting. In the meeting, we can pick on the notes icon and we can see all of those and edit them. And as I say, all of your colleagues in the same meeting can also work on those at the same time. And those tasks do get added to my to-do list. Here you can see I've got that task that was assigned to me from that meeting showing up in my to-do list. And if you use Planner at all, it shows up each meeting as a planner plan, and you can see all of the tasks from that meeting. There are some niggles with recurring meetings at the moment, but they will get resolved relatively quickly. Ideally, we'd want them to be one plan, but they actually split into a separate planner plan per meeting, per occurrence, which is a little bit of a mess, if we're brutally honest, but that is under review, shall we say. So hopefully will be resolved shortly. Now, animated backgrounds is something people have asked for a long time. Other meeting tools do support them. Now watch very carefully. There's a little video here showing how I can go into more video effects and I can pick up any of these backgrounds with the little play symbol on them. And if you look really carefully, where I'm trying very hard not to grin, you will see the little videos moving. The C is moving very gently in this one. So they are very subtle animations to showcase how we can use those animated backgrounds without them being distracting. Yes, there's only 4 of them at the moment. No, I can't add my own. Those will come in due course. Okay, but do bear that in mind if you're thinking about designing an animated background for use in Teams at some point. That gentle animation is the one that's going to give the best effect. So here we go, the new channels layout. Okay, and I do have a little bit of a video of this for you. First thing you'll notice is the information pane on the right hand side. Okay, that information pane is really helpful. It shows me who's in the team or the channel, if it's a private or shared channel. It also shows me any pinned messages, etc. But the big change is the order of the messages in the middle. The newest message is now at the top. Chat has not changed. If you go to the chat function, your newest message will be at the bottom. This is only in Teams channels. Okay. Oh, that's gone very weird. Let me try that again. Oh, that's not good. I do sincerely apologise for that. That was working fine the other day. I will give it one last try, and if not, we'll make sure that we share that with the recording properly. No. Okay. Let me just zoom in on this screen and point out a couple of other features to you. Okay, so we can see this button here to open and close the information pane on the right hand side. You can see those pinned messages, people in the channel, the most recent changes rather than them being part of the conversation thread anymore. Let's just try zooming in again. It doesn't go low enough until I scroll, but it does actually show as you scroll the older messages in that channel. I haven't got the right account open at the moment to show you it live. So as I say, we'll add that in for the recording for you. The other thing you'll notice that's coming with the new channels, it's coming almost at the same time, is that when you create new teams or when you create new teams, they'll come with a notes tab, not a wiki tab. And that notes tab actually uses OneNote. We've always had a OneNote notebook created with every team, and now it's been pinned at the top. So the wiki has been retired. You'll need to manually migrate content over from wiki into notes to keep those notes that you had in any wiki tabs in Teams. The wiki, it will still be in SharePoint, but it won't be shown in the SharePoint site behind the team, but it's not shown as a tab anymore. But migrate it over. OneNote is much better. It has version history, it has recycle bins, which the wiki doesn't. So I've never been a big fan of the wiki, so I'm really pleased to see this change coming forward. You don't need to worry about managing access to the OneNote notebook. Everybody who's a member of the team automatically gets the right level of access to the notebook as well. Intelligent Meeting Recap. Now, this is part of the Teams Premium license, and we'll say that to start with. And the Teams Premium license needs to be assigned to the meeting organizer, and the meeting needs to be recorded with the transcript enabled for this feature to work. So where the organizer has the Teams Premium license, the meeting is recorded and transcribed. A recap will automatically be produced after the meeting. It takes about an hour for the recap to generate, a bit longer if it's a longer meeting. And it basically analyzes the content and summarizes it. Works primarily from the transcript, so if your transcript is not accurate, and we all know it sometimes makes some interesting interpretations of what people say. But if the transcript's not accurate, then the notes are not going to be accurate. But it's a great way, if you missed a meeting, of catching up on it. Just like the recording and transcript, these are not automatically shared with people outside your organisation. Okay, we can export that AI generated summary using the copy all button you can see to the top there, and copy it and export it into Word or whatever you want to, and then share it with the meeting attendees, just like you can choose to share a recording afterwards. But the recap will not be visible for external people. Your internal users will see the recap from their calendar, as I say, as long as the meeting organizer had the the Teams Premium license. This is currently rolling out, and at the moment across UK and Ireland, we only get suggested tasks. Those won't be automatically created. That is coming later. UK and Ireland are the slowest rollout. We've got US, EU, UK and Ireland are last on that list of countries for this feature to be enabled, and it should be enabled for everyone by the end of August. The reason it's so slow is the amount of processing power that is required to deliver any of these AI features. So Microsoft are working really hard at the moment to upgrade all of the data centers. The amount of new computers, basically, that are going into these data centers, they're doubling, tripling in size to provide the necessary computer power to drive all of these AI features. And I'll be honest, that's why we're going to see a cost associated with a lot of these AI features, like Intelligent Recap only being part of Teams Premium licensing, because of that additional cost to run the features. One thing that's not extra and coming to everyone is new teams. Now, I mentioned new teams on the last Ketchup, so why am I talking about it again? Well, I'm talking about it again because Microsoft have now released the global general availability date for new teams on standard tenants. That's business and enterprise tenants. Education and government will follow. We've just had new teams roll out into education in preview a couple of months later than in business and education, and government will also have the new teams available as well, eventually. So the release date is basically going to be September. Okay, lots of variations depending on when your organisation switch it on. It will be what's called general availability from September, but still optional. Your admins will control the choice as to which client you open into, and you'll still be able to switch between new teams and classic teams. So that toggle, try the new teams, will be around for a while, but the wording will change, but we'll still be able to toggle between new teams and classic teams. So that will be on for everyone from September, unless your admins deliberately block it. New teams will be the default from September. Okay. So moving on to security and compliance, or security, compliance, privacy and risk, to give it its full name. The products we're talking about here are Microsoft Defender, for Microsoft Defender and Microsoft Purview. Now, Defender and Purview cover more than Microsoft 365. I've focused in on just the features that are Microsoft 365 specific. We have a new guide to help us get our records management deployment in place. And there are some really good tips in here, especially for those people who are not deeply versed in the whole information protection space, like most of our IT admins are not. So that's now out and very helpful. We've got auto labeling for cloud attachments. So those files that you share but don't send as a traditional attachment. Simulation mode for automatically applied retention labels. Thank the Lord. Or whatever you pray to. I pray to whatever Microsoft God is making my licensing and labeling work, depending on what day of the week it is, obviously. But this simulation mode helps me see what content is going to be picked up by my auto labeling rules, so that's very helpful. Automatic approval for disposition reviews, so that we don't get disposition reviews stuck at any particular level. E-discovery support for loop components and Teams video clips, again, a huge thing. If we're going to use them, we want to be able to see them and find them with the e-discovery products. And those system generated messages in Teams that we can never seem to get rid of. Retention settings, retention policies, we'll now cover those as well. So let's look into these in a little bit more detail. A little bit of a screenshot first and then an animation to help you see how this deployment guide works. So it's an admin feature, so it's part of the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Accessed through settings, there are a series of different guides. Can filter them for what we're looking for, and then there's the Microsoft Purview Data Lifecycle and Records Management Setup Guide. I'm sure they could have made that name longer if they'd really tried hard. But it is a useful guide. It does give us the steps and the thought process we need to go into. Have a look at this little video, this little GIF of it running. So you can see there's an overview of what it does. It helps us plan out the licenses and permissions, make sure our environment is set up before we start, plan out all of the configuration that we want, review the changes that we've made, all of those settings, and then we can mark it as done. This is obviously something you're going to go back to over an extended period of time. You can scan through it all, just don't click done because it ticks everything off. Okay. You can close it out whenever you're finished. You can click cancel, it'll still record where you're up to. And as you can see, there are lots and lots of steps in there to help understand all of the retention functionality. And it does actually cover records management as well, not just retention policies. So the E5 records management licensing also included. I'm afraid this one isn't very visual. I apologise for giving you a slide with lots of text on it. Okay, so cloud attachments, first of all, let's just be clear what we're talking about. Cloud attachments are those shared files. And when we share a file, one of the things we need to understand is what version of the file has been shared. And then how did it change from that point on? And we can't do that if we don't retain the version that was shared. So now if we share a file through OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, Yammer or Viva Engage to give it its new name. Okay, then the version of the file will be stored automatically and we can discover it with eDiscovery Premium. So this is really quite helpful. However you're sending your share links, whether you're copying the link into a message or using the share functionality, it will keep the version of the file. Okay, through, as I say, SharePoint, OneDrive, emails, Teams, or Viva Engage, which we used to know as Yammer. The simulation mode that we can now use for automatically applied retention labels allows us to run our retention labels, our auto apply policies in simulation mode. That basically runs through all of our content, applying the rules, but doesn't actually apply the labels. It just brings them into this review sample screen. So I can go through as an administrator and look at what it's labeled or what would be labeled when I switch it on and check to make sure that's correct. Now, auto labeling is an E5, A5, G5, the equivalent. Yeah, licensing feature. So you've got to have that premium compliance licensing assigned to be able to use this. But the biggest challenge with it actually isn't licensing. It's making sure it's picking up the right things, that we've configured the rules correctly. So this simulation mode is going to be really helpful. So that is now available. It should be fully released in everybody's tenants by now because it was due for full release by the end of April. So next item is the disposition auto approval. If I'm doing a disposition review, the question is, why would I want an auto approval? Well, I wouldn't apply auto approval to every stage, and you can see here it's set at 200 days. This is basically saying if I've got a disposition review and the item hasn't been reviewed in 200 days, or that stage of the disposition review has been pending for 200 days, move me on. Yeah. 14 days maybe for the first stage, definitely no more than 200 for the final stage, probably not on a single stage review, and possibly not even on the final stage. But one of the reason this has been introduced is there's no way to interrupt a disposition review. You've got to wait for it to finish. So we were finding people were off sick, lots of disposition reviews sat in that pending stage for a very long period of time. So this will help with that, it'll help progress it. So you might want to consider reviewing your disposition reviews and how they're configured to take advantage of this, knowing that it can jump through to that final approver much quicker and you don't have to wait quite so long a time. Microsoft Loop. So Microsoft Loop is starting to appear everywhere. We've already looked at it in those collaborative meeting notes. We've got Loop components in our Teams chat. We can put Loop components in email. The Microsoft Loop app is currently in preview, so we can have lots of items there, and it will hit all of the other workloads as we go forward. Okay, so it's really important that we can find that content that our users are generating and sharing in Microsoft Loop. And eDiscovery Premium can now find those loop files. Now, there is a reason I have chosen loop and fluid file types here. And the reason I've chosen both is that loop files used to be called fluid files. And they will, going forward, have the loop file extension on them. Okay. So really useful, but as I say, part of the premium eDiscovery. eDiscovery able to collect video clips. You might have noticed you can send video messages in Teams. If you haven't noticed, check your little send button by your Teams messages in chat and notice there's a little video camera there that you can use to record messages and send those as video clip messages. Previously in eDiscovery, we couldn't actually view the videos. We just knew a video had been sent. eDiscovery does now support viewing those video clips, so we can find that file and view it as part of our eDiscovery results. Both very welcome enhancements. System-generated messages, meeting started, meeting recorded, transcript, attendance, recording, etc. These messages in Teams meetings didn't used to be covered by our retention policies for chat. They now are. When it was first introduced, it only included messages from October 22, which is when the feature was introduced. This has now been changed, and it will apply retrospectively to system-generated chat messages in Teams meetings forever, going back to the dawn of Teams. So your retention policy will now get rid of all of those old messages as well. If, of course, you've configured your retention policy to delete Teams chat messages. And this really just cleans up a gap in what data was being retained. Now, you might wonder, why am I talking about Microsoft Entra? Talking security and compliance. I said Defender and Purview were the product names. Why have I thrown in an Entra? If you're not aware, Microsoft introduced the name Entra last year, about 12 months ago now, to collect together all of the identity features. So Azure AD, identity protection, verified IDs, identity governance, all of those sorts of features that they have with Microsoft 365 and in Azure as well. And there is a big event that is happening on the 11th of July. So if you're watching this on record, it might have already happened. So you may need to go and find the recording of that event if you're interested. Let me just find the link for those people who are live. But this event is going to talk about all of the features and changes coming to Microsoft Entra and Azure AD. If that's something you're interested in, do have a look at. Sorry, I can't copy. It appears today. Can't use Control C. I missed the C. That's the wrong button. Okay, so those of you who are interested in that, do go and find that event. If you're in the meeting live, I've just put the links in the chat. Otherwise, if you just Google Microsoft Enter event, if you're watching the recording, you will find that. And we will obviously cover this information in the next Ketchup as well. Next topic. The collaboration space, SharePoint, Stream, Syntex and OneDrive. Only 3 things in here. And the first one's probably the most impactful. The other 2, relatively minor changes, but they're going to make a big difference. So timeline recordings, the meeting recordings are now going to have these little timeline markers on. Some of them are only if you've got Teams Premium. Okay. The types of markers that we've got is when someone shared their screen, when they were mentioned in the meeting. So I'm looking at this meeting recording, and this is actually telling me that I was mentioned at that point, and somebody, in this case me, shared their screen right at the beginning. And then there's little markers for when people were speaking. Okay, the little chapters in there as well. And that just helps me navigate that meeting recording more effectively. Microsoft Lists now have a really easy way of seeing what filters have been applied. I'm sure you've got used to in other tools you're using, seeing the filters you've got on at the top. And now we see those with any SharePoint or Microsoft lists visible at the top. So SharePoint lists and Microsoft lists both have this feature, shows you what filters are on there, and make it easier to remove the filters you don't need or clear all the filters in one go with the link on the right. So a very small visual change, but actually a big productivity saver there. You might have also noticed your home page for OneDrive has been updated. It looks much more like the home page of Office 365 or Microsoft 365 now, with home showing me the recent files that everyone's been working on that I have access to, including loop files. I've got my filters at the top, only Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF at the moment. I would welcome more personally, but those are useful. My files are my files which are in my OneDrive, and then I have files which I've shared or shared with me. Mark items as favourites, either from the Microsoft 365 homepage or here. When you hover over a file in this list, round about where my laser pointer is showing at the moment, you get 3 dots either on the home page or here to mark a file as a favourite and save you hunting for them. And then the recycle bin, obviously, if you've deleted files with your quick access down the side as well. OneDrive is going to look a little bit different to this in the next couple of weeks. They are slightly changing the fonts and colour schemes on the icons. It will be a very, very slight visual change, but do watch out for that because we rely quite heavily on the visuals to ensure we're not in a spoof copy, that we haven't been accidentally duped into giving away our login details and got into an extra copy of it. So if you do come across OneDrive in the next few weeks and it looks a bit different, the fonts are different, the colours are different, then just have a look through the names of the files that you're looking at to make sure those are ones that you do work with, to make sure that you are picking up the correct copy of OneDrive. I'm sure it'll be perfectly fine. But that's a reassurance, a tip to give you the reassurance that you are in the right place if you're not certain about the look and feel of it. The other thing we've got coming is the ability to change the colours of the folders when we're looking at My Files. So you'll be able to colour theme your folders in your My Files as to the topic that they relate to. Now, a couple of updates with product retirements. InfoPath is officially out of support. It has been for a little while, but we now have a retirement date for any items that have been customized or built with InfoPath. So if your organization has worked with InfoPath, this is an important change. The message here was shared in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So all of your admins should be aware of this. And if you are an admin, please do read the message center, at least the weekly digest that we tend to get every Monday morning, and just be aware of that. One of the things I really like that they've done recently is they show me which service it relates to and how many users actively work with that product. You can tell this is from a tenant that only I work in because there's only one user. We shared this last month, but it's worth a reminder that if you use SharePoint workflows, they will be retired. It's time to move to Power Automate for all of your workflow and automation requirements around SharePoint and Microsoft 365 generally. So do have a look at that. It could take a little bit of time to convert everything. So I know 2026 is a long way away, but please do watch out for that coming forward. However, sometimes Microsoft change those dates, usually not by much. They've updated the retirement date on stream. They've given us an extra couple of months. Apparently people complained that February 15th happened after a really important date for people who have families and partners, Valentine's Day. So they've chosen to give us a couple of extra months. Could have just extended it to the end of the month, but they've given us till April 2024 to move all of our video off stream. Again, details about this and the process are included in the accompanying materials that will be shared with you after the call if you're registered, or on our blog if you've just come across us via the recordings on YouTube. So that was SharePoint, OneDrive, Stream and Syntex. Onto Microsoft Viva. Excuse me for a second. So Viva. Lots and lots of changes for Viva, but nothing major. Again, we're in this kind of quiet period. Big changes to Viva coming later this year, but at the moment we've got a couple of small things, 4 items I've picked out to highlight to you. For those people who work on Viva on the mobile phone, or work on Teams on the mobile and access Viva connections, one of the key selling points, if you like, of Viva Connections is it brings our SharePoint-based intranet into Teams. And if you've got frontline workers, people who are not desk bound, I was going to say deskless, but they're not necessarily deskless, but mobile first workers. It was a huge challenge using the Viva Connections app to browse SharePoint, because you click the link from one of the resources tabs that gave you all your SharePoint navigation, all your SharePoint sites, And then it wanted a different app, or it wanted to get your web browser, and then you had to sign in again. And to be brutally honest, it was a little bit messy. No more. We can open our SharePoint sites from the links and we stay in Teams. We don't need another app to browse and see the information on the intranet. And that's really, really useful. Another change is news notifications. Now, notifications are one of these things a bit like Marmite. Some people love them, some people hate them. Obviously, you can control your notification settings from the Teams app. So if you don't want notifications from news items posted and surfaced through Viva connections, you can disable them. But those, again, those non-desk bound workers were missing notifications. So Viva connections will now have notifications on it when people post an update that is surfaced in the feed in Viva connections. This is news from our SharePoint sites or announcements posted through Viva Engage. You also get a notification if someone likes, someone mentions mentions you in a comment or comments on a post you have made. As I say, Teams will honour the notification. Viva Connections will honour the Teams app notification settings, including quiet hours and quiet days. So if you have your mobile apps set to not give you notifications outside of working hours, that will be honoured through Viva Connections notifications as well. Okay. And if you haven't set those, go and have a look at the settings in your Teams mobile app, because you can set days of the week and hours of the day where Teams doesn't give you notifications. Very useful if you're accessing it on a personal mobile device. Viva Topics is the main Viva app that we didn't have a Teams-based entry point for. We now do. This surfaces for us the Viva Topics Center, the SharePoint site through which we can manage Viva Topics. If you're not managing, you're not editing, creating topics in Viva Topics, you won't need the Viva Topics app. But if you are, it's helpful because we don't have to break out into SharePoint anymore. We can manage it from Teams. The other thing you will notice in this screenshot, which I've got larger for you on the next slide, is that we now have the Viva Suite navigation starting to appear through the Viva apps. So you go into one of the Viva apps, you can click onto those three lines and see all of the other Viva apps. And this one's from Viva Insights, and yes, Viva Pulse for your team well-being and for your small team surveys to check up on well-being, check up on sentiment. So that's Viva Pulse. That is now in preview and is appearing in that integration in the navigation. Not in everything. If you look at this one in Viva Topics, it hasn't picked up Pulse yet. I then switched over to Insights within a couple of minutes to take the next screenshot, and it was there. So it's a little bit inconsistent which apps show up in which one, but they're gradually working through each one, and they'll all show all of the Viva apps that you're licensed for in due course. You only need to pin one to your side rail in Teams. So we don't have to have all 10, as we're up to now, Viva apps pinned in Teams, we can have one and access all of them from the same place. I've mentioned this, but I'll just highlight it. Yammer is Viva Engage. This rebranding is running through everywhere. The word Yammer will disappear in due course. We might see it hanging around. People will still refer to it that way, but Viva Engage is the new name for Yammer. Whether we're using it through Teams, through the web browser, through our mobile app, that name rebranding is carrying on forward. And this integration is increasing as well. If you're using the new Outlook, you can now post to your Viva Engage storyline, your feed, your personal updates from Outlook. You don't have to go into Viva Engage to post an update. So that's quite helpful when you start an email and think, actually, this should be a post rather than sending it to everyone. I should put it on my storyline. So those people who need to see it, who follow me, they can see that. Especially for senior leadership, that's a really useful way of doing it, because we don't get distracted then by everything everyone else has been posting. Focus on what we were doing at the time. So I think that's a really helpful addition. I mentioned there's big things coming. Viva Pulse will be fully available in July, so we'll cover that in our next Ketchup. Viva Amplify is due in September. There was a post recently on the roadmap confirming a September targeted release date. And we've also had confirmation that Viva Glint, Viva Amplify and Viva Pulse will all be included in the Viva Suite license. So there was talk of Glint staying as a separate license, so that's really good news if you've already invested in the Viva Suite. If you don't know what these products are, Viva Pulse, I mentioned, is for surveying within our team, so it's about getting sentiment. Have we got too much work on? What's our work-life balance like? How did this particular project go? What's our meeting mix looking like? That kind of thing. As a team leader, I can check in with my team. Viva Glint, you might have heard of Glint already. It's coming into the Viva family and using the Microsoft 365 underlying data storage, due for release second half of this year, but we don't have a full date yet. I estimate it'll be September with Amplify, but not confirmed. So that is for company-wide surveys, and Amplify is for messaging, for getting that message out to our users. Do I post it in Yammer, Viva Engage? Do I post it as a SharePoint newsfeed? Do I send it as an email? Do I send it as a Teams message? Where do I put it? Well, in Amplify, we write it once and we can mix and match where we post it, or send it to everyone everywhere. Perhaps not Teams messages and emails as well to everyone in the organisation. I think I might get in trouble for that, but it just makes it easier for those people who manage internal communications to get that message out to people where they consume it. And then review how many people were reached. Was the email read more than the Teams message? The SharePoint news read more than the Viva Engage post, so that we can target messaging more appropriately going forward. So that's going to be a very useful product. The last section, I think it's the last section of the ones that I picked out to look at. Yes, it is. And then we've got a preview of what's coming next later. So looking back, our last section is Office 365 apps, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other associated apps as well. We're going to look at authentication for signing in using the Outlook mobile application, sent to Kindle from your Word document, Microsoft Edge Workspaces and Microsoft Forms presenter view. So Authenticator Lite in Outlook Mobile. The Microsoft Authenticator app we can use on our mobile phones to prove that we are who we say we are when we're signing in. Multi-factor authentication. Something most of us are very familiar with now. There is resistance in adopting this app, which is actually the most secure multi-factor authentication method used by Microsoft 365 out of the box. And the resistance comes from the fact of having two apps. Most people have Outlook, then they have Teams. Okay, so it's a third app. And then they need the Authenticator app as well. And this is why we were talking earlier about Viva Connections staying in Teams rather than pushing us out to the SharePoint app. We don't want to clog up our personal mobile phones with all of these apps. Outlook is the most commonly used mobile app on personal devices. So it can now act as authenticator for you. For users who don't already have the Authenticator app set up, as an administrator, we can allow them to use the Outlook app and they get the message pop up that says, prove it's you. And as you've probably seen now, we need to put in a 2-digit number that's displayed on screen to confirm it's us and it signs us in. And that comes with just the Outlook app. If you've already set up the Authenticator app on a device, you can't use Authenticator Lite. Okay. The other thing we can't use the Authenticator Lite for is to reset our passwords. So if you have self-service password reset enabled, you have to use the full Authenticator app that's not working through Outlook Mobile. Mainly because Outlook Mobile doesn't enforce us using a fingerprint or a facial scan or a PIN number to access it, whereas the full Authenticator app does. Have you written your own useful manual? You want to send it to your Kindle and read it on your Kindle rather than on any other device? Well, Word now supports sending your document to Kindle. So you can choose, and this is personal, I send it to my own Kindle account. I can't publish it to Kindle from here. It's not a publication tool. It's about transferring a Word document so I can read it on my Kindle instead. And this allows me to transfer it so it looks like a book, or each page of my document looks like a printed page. Personally, I prefer the Kindle book approach because it's much easier to zoom in and out and adjust the screen size, but the graphics are not as good. Okay, if you've got a lot of graphical information in your document, charts and so on, those don't display as well. Okay. Otherwise, you can use the printed document, but I find the Kindle screen a little bit small for printed document format. Maybe it's because I need lots of glasses. Maybe it's my age. I don't like saying that. Edge workspaces are interesting. So one of the things I do a lot is I have a lot of social media sites open and I like to open them all, but on days when I'm not working on social media, I like to close them all down. So I'm there opening each tab and then I close down those tabs, and it's a little bit of a nuisance if I'm perfectly honest. So what I can now do is I can group them into an Edge workspace, and then I can open them all in one go. But we can also use those workspaces to create a collection of tabs that we share with colleagues. So if we're working, if you typically use, say, 3 or 4 web-based tools, and you come in a morning and you all sit down and open those 3 or 4 websites, we can create an Edge workspace and share it with our colleagues, and they can then go and open the same workspaces as us. We can have a number of different workspaces for different tasks. So you can use them for yourself to group your websites together and open multiple in one go, or you can use it for collaborating with your colleagues on different sets of web pages. Okay, so it's really easy to use. If you use Microsoft Edge, you've got those little 3 squares icon in the top corner. Just see it here. Let's just zoom in for you. Yeah, those little 3 squares in that top corner there. Create a new workspace, open your tabs as you want, and it opens a new window. So when you're done with it, you can just close that window down, and next time you want it, you go on the 3 squares and you open it again. Nice and simple. Presenter view in Microsoft Forms. Now this is something I use quite a lot in a webinar. I will quite often do a little form, and let's bring ourselves one up live here. Go on, you can do it. So here's a form that I've built. Okay, and I want to use it in the webinar, and I want to share this with you so that you can respond. And I could give you the link, or what I can do is I can now go to present, and you can scan that QR code, or I can copy this link and share that with you. And now people can go and fill in that form simply by, for example, picking up one's mobile phone, following the QR code, and they can fill in the form, and you see the information appear live. Now, I'm obviously the only one who's filled it in yet, but if anyone else wants to, that form is open to anyone, and you can fill that in. At least it should be open to everyone, unless I didn't set the permissions correctly. But that's great in a webinar and a kind of quiz scenario, any kind of presentation that you're giving. And we're now keeping that information inside Microsoft 365, which means we don't have to worry about the data sovereignty, etc., because it's using Microsoft 365 as its data storage in the background. So that was looking back. Let's look forward. Oh, Sarah, you can do better than this. Okay, so we so July to, but I'm so glad PowerPoint includes an update live feature for when we make mistakes like that. Oh. I'd like to claim that I did it on purpose to remind you that PowerPoint does that, but unfortunately I didn't. I just didn't notice I hadn't changed that. So looking forward, the things we're expecting before the next Ketchup early in November are new Outlook to be released with new features. I did spot this week the search folder functionality coming in there. The sensitivity bar that we have in other Office apps with the change the sensitivity label at the top, will now be supported in Outlook as well going forward. Reactions in Outlook, you might have noticed you can put smiley faces on email messages. Some enhancements there to make those more visible, but also for admins to disallow that feature as well. In Microsoft Teams, one of the reasons we got the animated backgrounds is they're also working on frosted glass backgrounds. And that basically allows me to do things like put a blur on, but keep my company logo. So I can put my company logo on and then just have a blur. Now, I'm really looking forward to that because especially when I'm wearing my Leadership Through Data top and I've got my Leadership Through Data background, the white on white, I have to have my streaming lights really bright to get the right contrast. So that frosted glass background is going to be really helpful for scenarios like that. And we still get the blur. So it's still giving us that background blur that is the most commonly used background, but also putting a logo on it as well so we can be on brand or have a bit of fun with balloons coming up behind us for parties and things like that. So hiding attendee names in webinars is a really important privacy feature. We can do it for ordinary meetings, but not if we're using the webinar functionality in Microsoft Teams, and that's going to be a Teams premium feature. So if you do a lot of webinars where people sign up, you want to use the webinar functionality, that's going to be really pushing you towards Teams premium going forward, but just for the meeting organizer, just for the person who sets up the webinar. So it's not a huge drain on your organization. See what time zone my meeting participants are in so that I know if it's the middle of the night for them. And I perhaps don't expect them to have their camera switched on, especially where you have people joining you at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. That's not an on-camera time. Do you find the 200 channels in a Microsoft Teams team to be a little bit limiting, including ones you've deleted? If you do, you're not the only one. That's why that limit is increasing to 1,000. That should be rolled out towards the end of next month, beginning of August. So watch out for that. In security and compliance space, choosing which teams we want to use as a data source when we're setting up eDiscovery Premium. So not just saying teams that this custodian is part of, but specifying which teams a custodian is a member of. I'm a member of lots of teams, but I only actively work in 3 or 4. Okay, so if you were looking at me through eDiscovery and investigating my activity, if you set me as a custodian and choose teams as a data source, it picks up every team, not just the ones I actively work in. So that will help cut out a lot of the noise. Guest reviewer for eDiscovery. This isn't external people so much, although it could support external users if you want to. That will be allowed, but this allows me to leverage a different person in the organization to review a particular eDiscovery case to normal. So that's going to be quite helpful as well. And using administrative units. So the sections we can break our organization down into for admin permissions, using those to scope our labels. I will also point out there was on this list, on the list of features due between July and October, 100 items to put in that I could have put into here, and most of them deserved a place. So there's a lot coming in this space. So We'll see what we pick to highlight on the next catch-up, but those were the ones I thought were of most interest. In the collaboration space, looking at SharePoint, Syntex and Teams, I mentioned the coloured folders for OneDrive. There's also a new look SharePoint start page coming, much more like that OneDrive start page that we were looking at, that home page, much more around what information you have access to on SharePoint. Microsoft Viva, we talked about the release of Pulse, Glint and Amplify. Topics are getting verified badges. Yes, this one has been checked, so we know it. Again, helping users cut through the noise that we have in our organisation. Access to Viva Learning using security groups. Up until now, it's been Microsoft 365 groups, and it's a bit of a nuisance. So that's really welcome. Surfacing Microsoft topics in other areas, Teams channels and Outlook desktop. We've been pressing for a while, but I have actually started to see it in preview. So really working now, and due for release by October. Some really in-depth changes in the background to help make that work as it should do, which is why it's been delayed. And I think out of all of the items I've got on these slides of what's coming next, the one that's going to make the biggest difference to users is organisation fonts. So PowerPoint. How many organisations specify what font they want using in their documents? And we have to go through every time we create a presentation and pull them in, install them sometimes, which can be a nuisance, but that is going to make a huge difference for a very seemingly small change. I think that's going to be the biggest one out of all of them. We're not expecting Copilot to be released in time for the next catch-up, but we are hoping to start to see some of the first Copilot features rolling out from September, October-ish. I don't have any information on that. I am guessing based on other items that are on the roadmap. There's nothing on the roadmap about Copilot. Again, we have no notification about pricing yet, but the noises we're hearing when people are talking publicly is all about how much those increase in data centers is going to cost. So Copilot will probably be an add-on license for Microsoft 365. So do watch out for that. But this is going to be the next big step in productivity tools. Whew. Whistle stop tour. I did promise you about an hour and 45, an hour and a half, an hour and 45. I will take questions, but just before I do, we have got some more webinars coming up. We've got one focused on e-discovery on September the 13th, with recordings available as well. If you want to sign up for that, there's the QR codes there, or go to the Leadership Through Data website. The next catch-up is due to be the 23rd of November, which is after Ignite. Okay, so Microsoft Ignite is the big productivity conference of the year, 14th and 15th of November this year. So that's to give me a few days to digest what's announced there and include the most interesting in the catch-up, with the recording to be published on the 1st of December, because that is going to be run in Australian time zone. So it's 10 o'clock at night for UK-based folks, but that's also available to sign up for from the website, and I'll find you the link while I'm talking. If you're wanting more training, these are the next few courses we've got coming up for the USA. And again, available from the website, or there's the QR code there in the corner of your screen. When I say for the USA, they're timed to be more appropriate to people over that side of the water, as it were, from me in the UK. If you're in the UK, these are the ones that are timed for UK. You can join any course you want. You don't have to be in the US or the UK. You can mix and match to suit. And if you are in Australia and New Zealand, you're probably going to be not wanting to get up in the middle of the night for our time zone over in the UK courses. So these are specifically set up time for your part of the world. So hopefully you'll find some useful training courses in there, as well as the free webinars. And I will find you the links for those in a second. Hopefully we'll see some of you at the ARMA Toronto conference from the 17th of July. I fly out on the 15th. And lots of really good speakers at that event. I'm really looking forward to sharing the stage with my colleague Joanne Klein there, talking about Microsoft Purview as well. So it's going to be a really good event, so hopefully you can make it. And I will thank you all for your time, and we will see you again next time. Thank you all very much.